So this week, the Statewide Treaty Bill was introduced into the Victorian Parliament, and there's a lot to unpack here, so I'm sure there'll be a lot of future videos and content that I do in relation to this bill. I've just had a good read of the bill this morning. I usually do two reads, but the things that really jump off the page that I wanted to share with you, which strike me as really concerning, include the fact that Galangwal, which is the essentially the Aboriginal Parliament that this bill creates, introduces for the first time in a long time in Victorian history, in a sense it's going backwards, hereditary peerage into Victorian politics. You have elected members of the First Peoples Assembly of Galangwal, then you have reserved members who are appointed by Aboriginal land corporations and traditional owners groups. Now, those Aboriginal land corporations and traditional owners groups are not necessarily democratic. They're often dominated by one or two fairly small families from a particular area. And so you have a scenario where essentially Aboriginal lawmaking power and really vast powers introduced by this bill are not necessarily just exercised by democratically elected representatives of the Aboriginal community. It's almost like a House of Lords style reserved seat function, which I wasn't expecting. I haven't seen reported anywhere at all, and I think is a really, really big concern in this bill that all Victorians should be rightly worried about. We also have truth-telling in the Victorian educational curriculum that Galangwal will be responsible for, and we have a First Peoples Infrastructure Fund that's being created. All of these things are deeply concerning. There's a lot more to unpack, and as I review the legislation and continue to find things to talk about in more depth, I will. But I think that this legislation is deeply concerning. It's a complete contradiction to the vote that ordinary Victorians made in the Voice referendum. And whereas the Victorian people overwhelmingly voted no against the creation of a new, essentially layer of government, a new bureaucratic body, that's exactly what this bill does. And that's exactly what the Victorian government have proceeded with against the wishes of the vast majority of Victorians. So I'd love to hear what you think. You can see some elements of what I've been talking about in the legislation here behind me. Let me know, do you support Galangwal, Victoria's own voice to Parliament?